Alright guys, today's video is soil test part 3, results and more. We're going to jump from the island, which is this score that you see down here of 12.99, to the main food plot where I have spent way more of my time and effort and money into restoring the soil. So, like I said in the previous video in part 2, if you've not seen that, please review that. This island has really, really poor soil, and that score indicates that, along with horrible pH. So, a lot of things to fix here as I work on restoration projects in the future. So, we will classify this as a D on the scorecard. Now, for those of you that are into restoring soil and you're looking for let me hold this up here a little bit better, and you're looking for something to change here, I'll go ahead and tell you, once you start getting anywhere near a score of 20, you're going to notice a massive difference in your food plot. I think once you approach, say, maybe a score of 17, 18 and higher, it's going to be way different than the island. Big time difference. And every time you're jumping your health score, you're going to receive better nutrition, better plants, bigger plants, more tonnage, and that results in larger deer. So that's why my goal is to get that number toward 30 or more, if I can pull it off. So let's graduate from the island, which I will come back to this sheet to do comparisons and explain why mixing is such a valuable tool when it comes to plants in your food plot. And don't worry, all the brown is from spraying, and I will do an update to that as well. I'm just kind of not going to walk out there right now. So I brought with me a couple of different sections of the food plot. So right here is section 2. Much, much better score, 1903. So section 2 is, if you see this strip right here with these sunflowers, go 12 feet behind it. That is where section 2 starts, and it stops way up there right at the edge of those sunflowers, maybe another 7 to 8 feet down from them. So section 2 is kind of a squared off area that runs to where you see those last sunflowers sitting on the crest of that hill. All right, section 2 has been restored now, or in the process of restoring, for 6.5 years roughly. It's not, yeah, 6.5 years versus 8 down here. So section 3 has 1.5 years on section 2. So let's look at what we've got with section 2. All right, pH 5.7, and compare that with the island. That's actually quite a bit better pH. If you think of it in terms like I talked about the piping, how much nutrients can flow up, well, I've got a larger pipe that nutrients can be pulled up at 5.7 versus 5.3. And this is what I consider my natural soil score, because I've not added buttloads of lime in here to change the pH. So if my pH, or when I do bring lime in here, bring it up to my goal, I have roughly 3 to 4 years, if I use ag lime, to get this soil balanced with bacteria and worms before it falls back to that number. So pellet lime doesn't last near as long. It's a faster reacting lime. So if you're looking for a quick jolt, especially like if you're here at 5.3, you could put pellet lime out, but be warned, pellet lime has a limit. You can only put roughly 500 pounds of that stuff out at a time before the rest of it can be washed away or wasted, because pellet lime has a much stronger release than ag lime. Ag lime, you can put 3 or 4 tons per acre and still use all of it. just a little mental note you might want to keep to yourself there. So that score is actually better. I will take that as my natural base number to work with. So then we move to soluble salts. The island scored a little bit better. That's not really going to change anything. And by the way, I didn't do a good job of talking about that. Soluble salts is salts in your soil that pull water out of your plants. So that affects your drought resistance. And actually all my tests come back with extremely good drought resistance. That is still a really good number. Excess lime rating, still low. That's nothing to get worried about. As a matter of fact, the sulfur levels can help eliminate that and change that to none, which is where I would prefer it. Now, here's the other one, guys. Organic matter. When I have been working in nothing but a rock pit, I've got this organic matter up to 4.8%. So I can hold almost 5, and well, actually in all reality, you can hold at least 5 inches of rain, but we'll say 4.8 just to keep matching the organic matter. Now, soil respiration, heck yes. Much higher score. So we went from marginal, that soil respiration. Remember what I said in part 2, that is the activity in your soil. How much living bacteria and microbes are doing the transactions in your plants. The higher the number, the more active your soil is. So 120 is considered optimal. I came back with a score of 183. That is why these plants are doing so much better. Anything out here is doing better in the island, hands down. No joke. But I want to give you a little history here why section 2 is each section has been handled by me differently. So for section 3, I tried more mass planting of soybean. Section 2, I tried a little bit more variety. Section 1 at the top had a different mix ratio of soybean and buckwheat, and I kept the sun hemp the same. And then section 4 is my experimental strip right here in front of you, which has far more variety in it than any other section. So just keep that in mind as I'm explaining these sections to you. I've had, at one point I did have some pumpkins growing in here in section 2, but they were, your typical field pumpkins. They didn't last long. Bugs eat them up and they were done, and they grew really, really bad. So that was literally like one of my early years before I started any group up here, and it was just a total failure. Okay, so section 2, we have kind of a planting history that we're going with, which is high in soybean, high in buckwheat, and a little bit low in sun hemp. I didn't put a lot of it up there, just some. And we came back with an organic score of 4.8. Now this is just summer blends I'm talking about. The fall and winter was pretty much the same throughout the plot, so that part did not change. I was looking for a summer or spring-summer combination for speed-up purposes and soil reproduction. But what I did get here, one of the reasons why this bacteria number is higher is I have been adding bacteria to the soil longer. I've also been, let me get this mounted back up here. I've also been doing far more crop cycles than anything in the island. And now my score is starting to boom. I'll be really happy when that's over 200. Now remember, my personal goal is over 500. That is getting to very, very active soil. And I will be purchasing bacteria in the future here to really help liven the soil up even further and try to achieve my goals. Now, one thing you're going to notice is the nitrogen water, or the water extraction of organic nitrogen. All right, so if we want to compare this to the island, look at how much lower we are. In every category, there's nothing, the only thing that's even close is that ammonium. And that, I consider that a good score with ammonium. So we put back section 2 and look at how much higher we are. We have more than three, well, wait a minute, what was that score? 9.2. You have more than twice, it's roughly about 2.5 times more nitrogen in the soil than you do in the main, or in the island right now. The only thing that I see here that really bothers me is the organic carbon, which is a result of my planting. I used lower or less powerful nitrogen producers in section 2. I didn't plant as much sun hemp in that area. Recently here I've added cow peas that started growing in there, so the organic matter number will do better. That is one thing that I see right off the bat that we need to get in much better shape. Remember, I told you average is 130 to 140 range. We're below average, and we're in the marginal category because of that. So this is an area that I need to work on. One way I can do that is up my nitrogen pumpers, which I have done. I've increased the sun hemp. I've added naturally with the mung bean and cow peas spreading with leftover seed. Those are in there. And now this year we're adding deer vetch. So this score is going to change, and change for the better. So that organic carbon number will start moving in a much better position once I start getting more nitrogen pumpers in here. And this is also a strategy you can think about in your fall and winter blends. If you have a low organic carbon number, plant more legumes. Plant stronger nitrogen producing legumes. Things like winter peas, you plant them heavier than normal. Plant crimson clover, ladino clover, any type of clover will help. Alfalfa is limited towards spring and summer. It's stronger than clover, but you could, if you plant your fall blends early enough, you can get a small dose of alfalfa in there, but it is expensive. So if you got the money to pull that off, then be my guest for that. That would be also a good idea, just more expensive. So I'm moving faster than what I was in the other one, because I feel like in the first two I did explain in great detail, so there's no need to rehash this again. All right, here's another one, guys. Microbe activity. I want to add some additional notes to this. Your microbe activity, the carbon number is at 166%. Man, my bacteria is looking for food, guys. I told you don't want to try to get that number over 100, but here's your but. There is a way to buy yourself time before they start, say, eating into the aggregate score. Or maybe, the carbon up here. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused, and let's start over. Let's forget that. So we're already over 100. We don't want these guys to start starving, because that means next they go to whatever's available. So one reason that's low is because they're eating this at a high clip. There's a lot more bacteria in section 2 than there is in the other areas. So that is one reason why this number gets inflated. So how do I buy myself time when it comes to microorganisms or even bacteria itself? When I do my till downs, all that material that I try to make a mat with becomes food. Worms, yes. Bacteria, yes. Microbes will start eating on any reserve crop that's there from last year. So it could drop my organic matter number in the soil, but I'm going to replenish it with the newly tilled material. So your organic matter number may temporarily drop a little and then come right back up. That's the but. So this is not like the end of the world when you see a number skyrocketing like that. Now, organic nitrogen number is at 9.7. I would love to see that higher. Look at section 1. The only category it throttled it in. Way higher organic nitrogen. How in the world did the island pull that off? To be honest with you, it's a lot of burning. I burned a lot of brush piles in there, a lot of stumps. There's going to be a lot of organic matter in that soil, and I've broken it down into its simplest form, which tells me those trees absorbed a lot of nitrogen. That's why my nitrogen came back so low. Well, out here in an open plot, we have a totally different animal. Now there's no trees interfering with nutrition. So you're working with raw soil numbers. So like I've stated in my past videos, that my nitrogen levels in here they were basically horrible. What you saw in the island was pretty much what we were running out here. It might have been a tick or two higher than that, but it wasn't much better. So now that I've been introducing crop cycles, I've introduced bacteria. You've seen all these different soil videos where I show you how the color has progressed here to really dark brown, practically top to bottom now. I'm really changing the structure of this soil. So we need to improve organics. And that tells me I need to modify my planting. So that can be fixed through planting. Am I concerned? No. As long as I know this can be fixed, it is not a concern to me. Now, this nitrogen release is what the plants will receive in that soil. Somehow, I have got a higher number of release than I do organic nitrogen. That's almost a little bit of a mystery to me why that number actually topped that one. Usually, your other numbers are better, but that tells me I've got a lot of nitrogen locked up in that soil. And that could be just, actually I take it back, could be just the properties of clay itself. Clay has a harder time letting go of nutrients versus sandy soil. So plants can actually siphon nutrients out of sandy soil much faster, almost at a rate of 3 times faster than clay soil. So if I'm holding on to nitrogen longer before it is released, then that could explain why that number is higher. All right, let's move on. Phosphorus. Look at how much higher my phosphorus is. Island, 16. Section 2, 78. That is a fantastic number to be at. However, that 78 is also throttled by 5.7. So it's probably running, maybe around 20 or 25 parts per million. That's a guess. That's not saying what's happening, like I stated in the last video. Also, potassium is only a little bit higher. The island had a score of 81. The plot came back here at 88. Well, if you saw how bad my ground is in the island, and I barely got enough potassium above the island, what in the world has happened to my potassium? It is basically the soybean that I've been planting. So all those years where I was planting basically 90 some odd percent soybean in here, I was depleting or slowing down the improvement of my potassium, either or. And I'm in the category of more like depleting, especially last year when I decided to go for the gusto and put 90 pounds out per acre in a smaller plot. That's typically fine, but you've seen what I did to my potassium reserves. I could tell you by walking through, they dropped. Well, 88 ain't cutting it, guys. We got to raise that a lot. So I need more potassium. I would love to see that way higher. So I'm not going to really mention personal goals again. If you want to see my personal goals, go watch part 2. Now, zinc scored a little bit higher here. We're at 1.27. When your phosphorus number comes back high, once you hit 25 and higher, your zinc needs to be in a ratio of 10 parts phosphorus, 1 part zinc. So my zinc needs to be setting at 7.8. So in theory, I do not have enough zinc. I would say most people land in that maybe a shade under 2 parts, up to 2 parts per million. That's probably about the average number of zinc in your soil. So I'm a touch below that number. Iron, look at that. I've nearly doubled my iron score over the island. Remember, optimal is 50 or 50 to 100 range for me. I would love to raise my iron. It won't take much, so I'm already at 41.5. If I had it setting at 60, I'm satisfied with that. But it's actually quite a bit better score than most people, because I have iron ore rock in here. So in theory, every time I'm tilling, I'm busting up some iron ore rock. You might say I'm putting a slow release fertilizer in here. So my iron level used to be higher than that. And I think my soybean has also started tapping into that as well and helping draw that down a bit. Another one I've talked about many times already, I'll keep this short, manganese. Look at that number, 7.7. Okay, here's a good comparison. Why is the island at 13.3? Whoops. When I know that I've been working longer on my soil. Well, here's one thing that happened. If you go back and watch my videos, and I'll show you what I've done when I'm fertilizing, I did not put any manganese sulfate in section 2 except for the very end right here. That's it. So I didn't take core samples from the end of the plot. I stayed away from the end, and I was out here in the middle of section 2. So my raw number is 7.7. See why I have issues with holes in my leaves? Every species except maybe this sorghum right here has had some form of holes in it. And I'm sure if I look hard enough, I'll find holes in here too that's maybe not done by June bugs or Japanese beetles. But 7.7 on their chart was considered high or optimal. Like I say, I want mine around 50 parts per million. That's why I'm bringing this up again. Different food plot, different area that was untreated for a trace mineral. So that literally is my raw number without any treatment whatsoever. Long way to go to raise that up, and I've already begun that process, so this score will be higher than what we're testing now. All right, guys, here we go. Like I talked about too in my copper video, copper decreases as I head up the hill. Section 2 is right there, like I pointed out earlier. Anywhere behind this strip in front of you, about 12 feet behind it, up to the sunflowers there, maybe about 6 feet short of them, that's section 2. All the way to the hump. So if my copper is declining as I'm heading up the hill, what does section 1 score? 2.9. Or I'm sorry, 0.29. So I've got degrading copper as I went up the hill. So when I dished out the copper, guess what I did? I went lighter, a little heavier, and quite a bit heavier in section 1. So the further up the hill I went, the more I dispensed. I'm trying to balance this out. So because I did these tests, I can understand how my nutrient flow is functioning on the up and down part of the plot. So in my mind, as I'm heading up the hill, I know all my nutrition, every category, was decreasing. Some very little, some quite a bit, and with copper, it was quite a bit of a drop-off. So on their test, I actually tested optimal for copper, but I've stated many times I want mine at 4 to 5 parts per million, and I will base it from there, and then kind of step back, do more tests, research, see where I can fine-tune this even more. Another one, sulfate. I've talked about this one as well. When We barely underdid the island. Remember, I put a lot of azomite in the island. It did contain some sulfur. So that's why the sulfate number is just a little bit higher than section 2. And there's not a lot of sulfur in azomite. It's like 65 to 68% silica. There is no silica number on here, so I don't have nothing to compare that with. But I've also improved silica out here in every section as well. Just as a precaution, if I'm short in the island, I'm pretty close to being low here. So I went ahead and addressed it. Now, I've addressed copper. I've addressed manganese. I've addressed the sulfate. As far as what I've done, I've also added potassium. I've not added any phosphorus. Organic nitrogen levels will rise because of my new nitrogen pumping crop. I'm increasing nitrogen makers. Sorry, guys. So that score, this whole category here is going to start increasing, and I'm starting to eat into these trace minerals now. So that number is going to be higher, and I guarantee the score is going to go over 20. And I've already seen a health change in section 2. Calcium is actually a little bit better down here. You can tell I have not been using calcium just by that score. That is a raw calcium number. Magnesium, I have not added any magnesium. That is also a raw number, which is low. It's getting close to being marginal, very close to marginal. And sodium, like I say, I'm not worried about it. It's sitting at 8. So you can see my hard work did indeed improve my soil. This is evidence of what I'm looking for, other than what I can visually show you when I do these videos. I need concrete evidence that I'm doing better. That score versus that score. Also, water-soluble aggregates came back world class, 96%. That is an incredible, absolutely incredible score. Again, that does not mean that the method I'm doing is better than no-till. I will still tell you no-till is better than what I'm doing. It's just I don't have the money to upgrade right now. And I'm hoping to get a chunk of ground back, and then maybe we'll talk about doing some of that down the road. But right now, my water-soluble aggregate score is 96. So anytime I show you doing these fertilizer videos, I'm only losing maybe as much as 4% of my nutrition. Maybe. That's a big maybe, because the aggregates sink down. So 4% of my nutrients are sinking down. That is very minimal nutrient loss. And when I get my bacteria numbers up, as I keep raising those, that nutrients will be recycled through them. So if I lose a little bit, it's replaced with what the bacteria, microbes, and worms do. And worms can dig down, eat maybe some dead microbes down to some of your deeper roots and bring it right back up. So in theory, I would not be losing as much as this score might indicate. And also, I have zero crusting in my clay. Absolutely zero crusting. And ever since that's happened, my germination rates have exploded. So this score is so much stronger than my island score. Yes, I got to put lime out here, and I'll show you. Here is another tip that I did not show. This is how you look for a balanced soil. Anytime you see that your calcium is not covering 75 to 80% of all those numbers, you have an imbalance in your soil. So this should be number 1. That should be number 2, number 3, number 4. Actually, you could swap either one, and that should be your last one. When you see hydrogen show up in your score, you don't have enough calcium in your soil. So you think of it as a glass jar. So it's let's say a 6-inch deep glass jar. I have 6 inches of soil to work with. So I can only put so much calcium, so much magnesium, sodium, potassium, and hydrogen in that mix. And if I don't put enough calcium in there, somebody's going to fill that role. Well, hydrogen fills the role. There are benefits to hydrogen for plants. It does help increase size, but don't get me wrong. Uh-oh, I hear rain. I think I'm about to get run out of here. Don't get me wrong, but that's too much. Way too much hydrogen. Hydrogen turns acidic. So that actually hurts my pH. So when I add calcium in here, calcium will flush the hydrogen out. And then when I add magnesium, that number will go up. Potassium numbers will go up. But still, calcium will dominate 80% or 75% of that 6 inches in that glass like I've talked about. And then the sum of all calculations, this is all what plants have access to right now. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So this soil is still not balanced. And here's the recommendation. They want 10 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Well, that's to get it to adequate. I'm going to shoot for optimal, and I will do a video on this. 40 pounds of potassium, I absolutely agree with that, but I want more. I think that rate should be more around 80 or higher, especially with my goals. And everything else comes back with a big 0. And this is not right. That should say a certain amount of lime is needed. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm sorry. Right here. I put soybean in there and a green cover mix in there as well. I put two mixing options. So there we go. If you put soybean out, now they're saying I need 1.6 tons of lime. See, change your plants, different results. Different plants, different results. Different plants, different results. So it's all about the system you run. That's why I've repeated that saying multiple times. It is the system I am running that determines what I need, which is why I want my numbers higher than their recommendations. All right, guys, so that's it. The rain is going to run me out. I can see it coming. And I will do more on these soil tests. It's already over 30 minutes. But I am very happy with the progress this soil has made. And every year that you're here, you will continue to see those progresses that happen, whether it's for the better or the worse. This is basically an open channel where I show people what I'm doing, what happens, did it work or did it not work. All right, guys, have a good one. And I got to get out of here now.